So kids don't need protection for losing. They need the courage to take a try and the tools to process losing. That toolbox that enable you to manage that and to move on and to reset and to restart. And that's a continuum.
Welcome to Mental Stillness. My name is Derek, and I'm excited that somehow you stumbled across this podcast. One of my goals when starting this podcast was to bring mental health conversations into leadership circles. Welcome to another episode of Mental Stillness, and I've really enjoyed getting to talk to fascinating people doing amazing work, and today's no different. So, Alberto, welcome to the podcast. I'd love for you to share a little bit about who you are, your background, just so our audience gets to know you a little bit.
Thank you very much, Derek, and thank you for having me. So as you can hear, I'm Italian, and I grew up with the love of sport. I graduated in mechanical engineering, and then I dedicated 20 years of my life in Procter Gamble, where so I grew up in that organization. It was an amazing experience, starting in product supply, then moving into marketing business, and then in the last 8 years, I've been part of the team of Adidas, and in the last few years. Till a few months ago, I've led the sport business units globally.
Procter and Gamble to Adidas. So how did you go from that to Adidas? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a big. I mean, there are a lot of difference of industry, a lot of difference in the approach. But at the end of the game, consumers have some, behavioral threads, and when it's about understanding consumer, understanding their needs, understanding how the product can change their life, there are also a lot of similitudes. Then, of course, the industry carry also different business model, different approach, and different ways of running the business and connecting with the local culture and with the communities. But definitely, there are also some elements that could be replicable somehow. But it's been a great experience. I'm a person that loves sport, so going back into sport has been great. And then I, of course, developed a little bit of my background and my skills and my values from a company that has a lot to say in that sense, both from marketing capabilities, but also for people values. So I think I've been lucky in that path, I would say.
You've been a part of some global organizations that have a lot to say in marketing and leadership, and they've clearly made their imprint on this world and have impacted a lot of people. And so I know today I really want to steer the conversation towards some of your own learnings as you've rubbed shoulders with, world-class athletes. And I do want to go ahead and I want to share your book's title, The Formula of Formulas: From the Sports Champions, the Inspiration to Bring Out the Best in Ourselves. What prompted you to lean into creating this book?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of personal view on mindset. There is a lot of definitely background and things that I learned in that journey, but also learning from other, and in this case, learning from the athletes. I had the chance of interacting with 22 world champions, and then having also the foreword made by José Mourinho. And with 22 world champions and Olympic champions, there is a lot to learn. And, sometimes also things in business, in leadership, in life, and in mindset can be told with very different type of metaphors. I find the one of sport very powerful to me, at least it told to me. And I think it talks to also many different type of generation. And somehow the idea was to find lenses and anecdotes, but also point of views that could, unite people as well around some specific topics, being mindset, being courage, being work ethic, being access to sport, but also being passion for sport and passion for winning. And I think there is a lot of personal view from the athletes. There is a lot of common threads. And I think there is a lot that could even impact through the lenses of sport, our lives, but also our approach into business.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think sports do a wonderful job of testing our physical selves, but even more than that, our mental selves. And it's interesting. I would love, this question. I know you mentioned interviewing 22 world champions in your book. Here's a question I want you to think about. So, of those 22 world champions, what did they teach you about winning and what winning is and what winning isn't?
So I think there is a lot of sense of lack of entitlement. What I mean is that as opposite to a culture and to a society that I think are taking a lot of things for granted, for the athletes and for sport is a new challenge every time. Every ball, every game. You will need to reinvent yourself, have the maximum focus, perform at best. And I think by looking at sport, that is a very uncomfortable type of activity because, sport, if you wish, is really the opposite of comfort. It's very uncomfortable. And, is every week you lose or you win and you need to manage all those emotions, right? And so and it's not something that is imposed. You do sport and you have chosen to be uncomfortable and you have chosen to keep driving the best and growing continuously. So I think what you see about the passion for winning is that it connects a lot with with efforts, with attitudes, with work ethic, and with the intent of always stretching your and going over your boundaries and going over your limits. And talents is definitely something that helps, but is also very fragile because at a certain level, many people are talented, and in order to get to the very to the tip, is not enough talent. It requires other characteristics.
I've heard you say before, talent may give you a runway or set the stage for success, but to stay there or to truly become a champion, you would say that it goes beyond talent. What are some of those other characteristics that you find?
So I think one thing that is important to observe is um, there is a little bit of confusion about winning, and I think it's part of mindset and it's a part to go moving from talent into maximizing your own potential. I don't think there is any problem with a culture of participation. I don't think that the athletes even reject a culture of participation. I think the problem is the confusion and the consequence of that confusion. So when winning doesn't mean anymore winning, then efforts becomes optional. And when effort becomes optional, then growth disappears somehow. I remember José Mourinho saying clearly, excuses destroy potential. And if everything is good enough, nothing gets better. So this, I think, is important because while it's important to foster participation, it's also important to remember that the danger is not really to that everyone could be good enough. The danger is teaching people that acceptable results are disconnected with commitment and with efforts. So there is a lot of work, efforts, and commitments that should be behind any type of result. So I think when you look at champions, they are not really obsessed with the medals themselves, but they are obsessed with standards and they are obsessed with raising standards continuously. And there is a little bit of a nuance on that because it would be limiting saying winning is just being number one. And of course, everyone wants to win somehow. But I think we don't need to forget what is behind that. And behind that is a continuous seek for improvement, for growth, and for higher standards.
When you think of winning, I like one of the questions that you pose to the athletes in your book. I would love to share what the question is. And then I was really drawn to what Ian Thorpe had to say about this. So I'd love to, maybe we can dialogue about that. So the question you raised was, is it harder to win the first time, the second, or to come back and win again? Ian Thorpe says the first time that you win is definitely the easiest. I tell people that if you're a fan of the sport, you always cheer for the champions. If you're a fan of betting, then you cheer for the underdog. The underdog has no pressure and can do anything without the expectation. When you are the champion, you have increased expectations, more pressure, more things you have to do to reach that performance while everyone else wants to beat you. Was that a common tone as you talked to these champions that it truly was about not getting to the top, but sustaining that level of
Yeah.
performance?
I think some would say that winning the first time is a discovery, like you don't expect that, or you need to, or, no one is expecting that eventually, or you also discover something in yourself, so the potential to be at the tip. But then the vast majority will say that maintaining that level of performance and keep growing that level of performance and going over the pressure of expectations is definitely a big challenge. I think this topic of pressure is a very important one because on one side, pressure definitely can be tough to sustain, but also we need to remember that pressure is a signal of potential and expectation. So expectation means that someone believe you are capable to do something great, something remarkable, something meaningful, something memorable. So this is why, this is why it's considered, or, Billie J. King said, and it's written a flashing meadow, pressure is a privilege because it's this ticket of entrance. It gives you the ability of raising expectation, but also tells you can make remarkable things. And so I think this is an important topic. The other topic is that they have different way of managing pressure. I think what is important to see in those big champions is the ability of reset very quickly. So actually, it's been done a study that shows that the factor of the most successful champions, the key factors for winning, is actually the reset time. Shorter is the reset time, higher chance they can win. The reset time is this, passing through a mental state of a disappointment into a mental state of a new opportunity. The next point, the next ball, the next game, the next season. And I think the ability of, overcoming pressure by resetting very quickly is one of the factors that are making those champions so successful.
Yeah, I spoke recently to a professional golfer on tour, and that was one of my questions I was asking. Like, hey, you're standing over the shot, you make the mistake. How do you shift that mindset? And kind of what I'm hearing you say is being able to kind of have your moment, but then kind of get back to that next opportunity and not dwell on the mistake or the mishap. So being able to shift that quickly.
Yeah, next ball, yes. Next serve, or next throw. Like, yes, it's exactly that.
Someone who's pursuing that to win for the first time, I would imagine that they're trying to prove to themselves, maybe prove to their loved ones, like, I've got what it takes. I can win the championship. I can do it. And so the way I think about winning and winning the second time is the first one, your goals are a bit differently. They've never done it before. Like you said, discovery. Second time they have done it before. But now they're asking themselves, was it a mistake? Did I get lucky? Having a second one is going to legitimize me a bit more that I'm
Yeah,
of this level. And so I feel like, and as you're talking to athletes, do you feel like the goals change between the first win and the second win and beyond?
I think the goal stays. It changed the way that you approach it. So I'm seeing them, of course, getting a little bit of experience more, a little bit of, they realize that doing it one time doesn't mean that you will do it the second, but it means that you have the potential of doing that. And I think there is on one side the pressure to be managed, on the other side there is the belief. And I'm a big, I think that belief compounds way more than many other skills or trainings. The sense of belief that the athletes can build over there, if they really can, can handle those emotions that bring them to the top, that makes a big difference. Yeah, so I've seen belief really compounding way faster than technical skills.
When you were researching and interviewing and writing this book, was there any responses or any stories that come to mind that you were shocked by?
No, I think there were many things, maybe not shocking, but very interesting. I remember Stan Smith talking about, a purpose in every single shot. Like, just imagine if you have a purpose for every single shot, how much your abilities can grow over time. Just that is different than hitting a ball, right? I remember Noah Lyles when I met him the first time. It was back 8 years ago. I remember him saying, and he didn't achieve yet any level of like world championship, etc. yet at that time. And I remember him saying, you know what, during in, in November with Coach Lance Brauman, that also is part of this book, when we hit our heels and we do the repetition, we clearly see that some will fade out earlier, and when everyone is at the end of their abilities and everyone is lying on the floor, I want to do one more. And so this to me was telling already about a kid at that age that is always looking for raising his standard, achieving something more, overcoming his limit. Sport is all a game about overcoming your own limit. A sport is not something that teaches you to overcome the other. It's about overcoming your previous state. And I think there is a lot also connected into business. There is this mentality about not leading by ego or by overcoming others, but is leading by raising standards for yourself and for the people around you. And so I have, there is also a mathematical rule. If you take the rule of the 1%, right? If you compound one in a year is one. If you compound 1,01 at 365, it will be 38 in 1 year. It's exponential. And this is about 1% every day. It's just the little bit more. And this is not just about more work, the 1% more work. It's not about that, but it's about the 1% to stretch your abilities beyond, to stretch your relationship, to stretch your mindset, to think bigger, to outthink the competition, or to have an idea more, or to share something more, or to have an interaction more. Again, it's just the mindset of raising standard continuously. And when I say 1,01 at 365, it's 38. It's 38 times. And then if you compound it in a career, it's a lot. It's the little bit that makes a huge difference. But it's not about time, it's about identity. This 1% more is about believing that raising the standard and continuous improvement is something that you need to pretend from yourself, you need to pretend to the other around you, and it's a way of being. It's the DNA. It's an identity. It's not a request. It's not imposed. It's your sense of believing that things can be better and you can be better every day.
And it has to come from a deeply personal motivation to be sustained.
Yeah, there is a lot of passion, motivation, and even obsession. Many of those champions, I would argue, they have a passion that elevate to obsession in the positive sense. I don't consider obsession like something negative. I think it's when passion really meets the repetition to a level of to a level of consistency that repeat over time.
So this is a podcast where we talk a lot about mental health, mindset, and also leadership. And so, high performance, like the world class athletes, what can they teach us about corporate life?
I think, well, there are many factors. Um, One factor is about honesty of the performance. Sport is very simple. You win, you lose, everyone sees it. And there is not debate. And it's very, let's say, both democratic, visible, honest, and I would say is very pragmatic as well. And I think those are factors that can tell us something about business. There is one reality that we like it or not, it is what it is, but unfortunately, is the reality of the fact. Like in sport, results are public and visible, while all the efforts and training you put behind is not that, is not that glorified, is not that visible. And you know what? I'm not saying that the training doesn't matter, because actually the training is the most important part, in the sense that really it's where you get all your potential realized to the point of being successful and competing. But the reality is that this is not visible. So a lot of the work of the athletes, like a lot of the work in business, it goes behind is hidden by the result, and the result is what at the end is lasting and is visible and will be the legacy eventually, together with the growth of organization, of your people, and the growth of the community around you, right? Those are the things that will be visible. So I think this is a connection with sport that is important. The other connection with sport, I think, would be the fact that there is an advantage in business. In business, we keep growing by building blocks of our equity, of our professionalism. This is different in sport, because in sport, every single game, every single ball, it's a new story. The fact that you have delivered a great performance and you won the previous race doesn't mean that you will do the next. So there are some connections somehow, because it's the same on business, but at least on business we have the chance of keep building on our experience, keep building on our equity, keep building on our professional environment, right? While in sport, every time you start from the starting line, everyone is equal and everyone has a chance, and everyone has somehow the could be anything. You can win, you can lose, you can And I think this is also another factor that there are some similarities and some difference. Um, the other one is about delivering your potential somehow. And I think the big question of athletes is, and what they ask themselves is, how far I can go and how much I can achieve. And uh, and the only answer they have is to work to leverage their talent, but also work as hard as possible. Now, work as hard as possible is not a matter of time, but is a matter of understanding what are your limits and do everything possible in order to overcome them. And then there is another one that is about consistency and persistency, right? I mean, there is a beautiful speech of many have seen probably of Tom Brady, the greatest, at Stanford, I think it was. And he says something that is pretty straightforward. Like, to be successful, you don't need to be special, but you need to do what the majority of people they don't do. That is being consistent, persistent, and to work hard for your objectives. And I think this is also a connection with business that is pretty evident.
The emotional roller coaster that sports provide as an athlete and also as a spectator, there's a lot of how that connects with the ebbs and flows of life. And I know that from a parenting standpoint, I'm just kind of curious. I'm a father myself. Like, how has your study and research affected you as a parent with what you've learned from these athletes?
I think to me, there is one element for example, that as a parent is very critical. I think that is, you know, the relationship with failure. And that is true for every kid. It's true in the relationship also with the parents. And I think we need to redefine failure. And I think it's important for us as parents to redefine failure for us, but also for professional, but also vis-a-vis our kids. I think at the end, failure is not about losing, and sport tells you because you lose continuously. And that's something that, sport teach you to manage those emotions. But failure is really not about not to try fully. So kids don't need protection for losing. They need the courage to take a try and the tools to process losing. And I think there is a fundamental difference. Losing, and sport tells you that you don't avoid losing, but you need to have that toolbox that enable you to manage that and to move on and to reset and to restart. And that's a continuum. And I think sport is perfect at the end for kids because you lose on Sunday, then you train on Monday, and resilience is built on cycle. You try, and then you fall, and then you retry, and then you reflect, and then you repeat. Um, I think if we remove failure, we really remove growth. And uh, and I think this relationship of sport, people, profession, failure can be redefined. Learning from sport.
I like that mindset of giving the courage to try and the tools to process the failure. And so as a for the parents listening or even those leading a team, I think that also applies. You want to be leading a team that has the courage to make decisions to to um, to try to problem solve without you having to handhold them. But then, as the parent or as the leader, you're there to process with them. And so, I would imagine too. Part of giving them the tools to process the failure is modeling that yourself as a parent, letting your kids know when you fall short, letting them know when you've tried and failed, and bring them into your process. I would imagine that would be very healthy as well.
I believe in the fundamental truth that failure is not really or losing is not really in being second, third, or seventh, but in being second, third, or seventh without trying fully. And so this, I think, is raising those expectations. It's important. And I think we shouldn't confuse like average and mediocrity eventually with the expectation, with setting standards that enable to progress continuously. And this doesn't mean that you will win every time, and that's fine. This doesn't mean that you will be the best every time, and that's fine. But you need to pretend to raise the standard continuously. You need to still aspire, you need to still expect, and you need to try. You cannot do it in everything, but there must something that you try, that you put all your efforts in, that you really want to see how far you can go. Yeah, and you do it in a way that should be like honest. Like radical responsibility for me is as an important step in business, is an important step for people, is an important step for professionals, is an important step for parents, and is an important step for leaders and coaches and kids. Like no excuses, no blaming, no externalizing. Like I remember Mourinho saying one time, José, a true champion makes himself. It starts every day what I can control, what I can do, what is in my responsibility to improve today. Not 10 things, maybe just one. One more repetition, one more, one more, uh, one more activity, one more effort. And so I think that at the end, winning starts when excuses end.
The other thing about sports that's interesting, I heard this a long time ago. Before you make a business deal with someone, play around the golf with them first to help reveal and to see what their character is, and to check on integrity. And I go back to the quote you had a quote in the book from John Wooden. I'm a huge John Wooden fan, but winning takes talent. To repeat takes character. And so what sports allows us to do is as parents with our kids or with ourselves, like it truly is a test of our character. And so what would you say about just that aspect of how character plays out with sports and athletes?
I think one fundamental thing of character is that really in sport, in sport at the end of the game, character comes across because sport is not comfortable. I mean, sport is a structured discomfort. And again, as I said, it's not chosen, but it's chosen, it's not imposed. And so, I think also in your character, like sometimes we play in the camp of psychological safety that is important, but doesn't mean protection from standard. It means clarity on standards. It means clarity on expectation, not protection against that. I mean, the human being is wired for progress. The human being is wired for growth. And so if you take the champions again, what sport tell us in terms of revealing characters, they don't need champions, they don't look for comfort. They see growth. And again, how much uncomfortable it is, it potentially depends on the speed of your growth or the limit that you put for yourself. Comfort somehow preserves you, while at the end, what transforms you is that seek for a new level of standard, a new level of excellence. So I think fundamentally, like in sport, again, discomfort has this type of meaning. It's voluntary. It's directed toward excellence.
So to recap some of that, I think that there's a lot to learn there. Sports in general is intentionally putting yourself in places of discomfort, intentionally uh, pursuing growth, not avoiding pain or conflict, or it's about leaning into it and coming out the other side a better version of yourself.
Exactly as you say.
When you talk to these performers, and I know you cover this in your book as well around rituals, as someone who works in kind of the mental health space, we all do certain things to self-soothe, to comfort ourselves, to try to alleviate stress. And I believe it was I remember in your book, Stan Smith and Rafael Nadal, both there were stories in there of them. They had rituals. When you asked Usain Bolt that, he said, "No, I don't have any rituals." And so, talk a little bit about how rituals play in top performers from your experience.
Yeah, I think, there are many different views about rituals, and I've heard many different things. And some people believe that rituals is something spiritual. That could be time to time. Some may believe that ritual is more a mechanical reset of your state of mind. And I believe for the vast majority of sport women and sport men or people that play sport in any way, it's more about resetting your mental state. It's like a routine that helps you restarting. It's the famous discussion we had about reset, that reset time. I think it is for the number of bounces of the ball they do, the tennis player before the serve. Could be Rafa, that of course Rafa Nadal, that was putting all the bottle lined up, and there was this, let's say, rituals that he was, and is again resetting the mental state. Put yourself again into the best condition to perform at best. So I think for some there may be a spiritual angle, maybe for some, but for the majority I've seen being more a more a psychological reset. And I think it makes a lot of sense because I think it makes sense because I think every one of us requires some, some level of routine that enable us to restart with a stronger, view, restart with a stronger sense of belief and reactivate some mechanism that also passing through failures continuously in sport requires to be replugged.
I would love to build on that with just a couple thoughts. For those listening that if and again, some people are drawn towards rituals and as you said, that's sometimes it's more physical, sometimes it's physical and spiritual. There's a spectrum there. Rituals can definitely provide comfort. It's something that I've done before. I think about I love basketball, so NBA players are typically dribbling the same number each time at the free throw line before they shoot the free throw. There's something predictable about that. They have experiences of them dribbling it twice and then sinking the free throw. And so there's comfort to that when you're facing something uncertain like am I going to make this shot or not?
Absolutely.
A ritual provides something that I can kind of channel my energy towards instead of just spiraling in my head about it. I can do something. So I think they can be extremely, extremely healthy for that reason too.
Absolutely. Yeah, in that sense, as you say, you are approaching something uncertain. No action is the same, no shot is the same. Everything, you are facing a moment and a situation that you don't know what you don't know. So you are facing uncertainty. And the game is uncertain. And I think putting something certain to restart and approach an uncertainty is something that put your mental state in a better condition. So I think rituals really helps to to have a better ground and to re-standardize the level and the ground you have in order to approach different situations.
When you think about your time at Procter and Gamble, I'm sure you had some key lessons. You moved to Adidas. Maybe it's even around this book. How have you been transformed by watching other people perform at high levels?
Yeah, I think, in that journey there has been, I must say, I had the privilege to learn from outstanding leaders, very different. I have the privilege to learn, and even growing more in the organization, I have the privilege to learn also from your team and from your people, because at the end, mathematically, more you grow in the organization and higher is the critical mass of learning you can get from, the part of the organization that is lower in the hierarchy, and lower is the chance of learning at the top because you get a little bit closer, and so the pyramid, shrinks, right? So, um, and this I think has been also through very different set of values and approaches because in P&G, the imprinting is very strong as you start in terms of value, in terms of behavioral code, and this is something that I will never forget. Is I am I grew, and in my journey, the imprinting I got on values from P&G has been exceptional. And of course, I will never forget that. And then, of course, you enter into different reality where there are, of course, different circumstances, different approaches, and you need to keep learning. I think the approach to learning has been one thing that has been always something important for me in general. There is always something that you can learn from any circumstances. There are situations, again, winning and losing. They offer a huge amount of learning. There are different type of leaders that, may not be, some may be more in sync with your leadership values and style. Some may be in a different place, and that's okay. But there is always an angle that you say, oh, that's actually interesting. And um, so definitely then there are more business specific topic, of course, to very different industry with different set of business drivers, with different set of, critical factors that enable product, brand, and competitive models to be seen in the market. So, but I think it's more, I mean, what I really have appreciated about my journey is the privilege of learning continuously and feeling that there is never an end state. And probably that has been a key theme of my approach to people approach to businesses, approach to leaders, and approach to the organization and people around me.
I like the idea of being a lifelong learner. There's no finish line. I need to continue to be humble enough and hungry enough to pursue growth and realize that there's more to learn.
Yeah, and I think this book, that by the way, is a book where every copy donates to projects supporting kids development in sport in underserved communities, with the organization Common Goal. There is a contribution for every copy, and I think also the book is a continuous seek for learning, for finding a pattern, from finding solutions. And you get to the end of a 30 years, you get to a point. You get to a point of a 30 year of career that you have seen a lot, but also there you talk with the athletes and you can keep learning a lot. And so the formula of the formulas is not an end point, but is more a trigger for new reflections. And has been a trigger for me hearing from them, and has been a trigger for reflecting and finding new patterns of successful people like the athletes, and finding also new lenses, because again, the lenses of sport could be very original compared with the way that we can see a business that could be monolithic, or could be by cliches, or could be by because I've heard that, or because we are used to the people that we were used to work with. So they give a different light, and they give a different perspective on things. And yeah, so it's a continuous seek for learning.
So the book, The Formula of Formulas, I will put the link in the show notes. How else can people stay in touch with you?
Through my LinkedIn account, through my Instagram account, and I will be happy to, share thoughts and having conversations. Or, yeah, I mean, also there, connecting with people with different background, with different cultural experiences, with different business experience, but also life experience is quite fascinating. So one of the things that also was very privileged in working for global or multinational company is being exposed to different cultural environment, to different approach to things, to different ethics, to different mindset, attitudes, and this has been very enriching. Now, it's still a starting point, because I feel sometimes like meeting people in different places of the world, or talking with people in different places of the world, that there is even more, that there is even something more interesting, that there is a new angle, and this is quite stimulating. Yeah.